And you said mission with the church?
Yes.
Which church?
I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints.
Let me tell you, man, that is such a massive edge. Massive edge. So
yeah, okay, so first off, yes!
We've been dogged on just for so many years that whenever someone that has like done something cool and they say, yeah, I'm a member of the church, we all feel like just vindicated, like, yeah, we are cool, we are.
Well, listen, if you've watched The Matrix, they called it Zion, right? Zion was a place of refuge. Zion was a place of safety. Zion was a place of peace. They have bastardized that use of that word.
Everything these Mormons are about to say about Muhammad and Islam is also true about Joseph Smith and Mormonism.
This is the correct religion. This is the religion that all of humanity needs to be a part of, Islam. And we will not stop until it enters every home.
That it is the true religion and they will not stop until it enters every home. It's more of a tactic of forcefulness that you will submit to the God of Allah.
Would I be comfortable if I saw a crowd of 18-year-old sisters and elders outside the MTC shouting an LDS version of this? But I think not only would I be uncomfortable, I think 90% of Mormons and maybe all of us would be deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so going back to the Quran,
we will establish our religion by the sword. We will trample down our enemies and make it one gore of blood from the Rocky Mountains to the Atlantic Ocean. I will be to this generation a second Muhammad, whose motto in treating for peace was the Al-Quran or the sword. So shall it eventually be with us, Joseph Smith, or the sword.
By saying, this is Zion. Here, come live in this compound, have many wives, lots of kids, and this is God ordained, and this is what they would call Zion. For me, this feels like hell. They brainwash these people to have them believe that this is Zion.
How many wives would you like to have? As many as God will give you.
Whether it's about their second Muhammad, Joseph Smith, or the first Muhammad, or about Warren Jeffs. I guess somebody forgot to get these Mormons the memo. Charlatans never change.
Big top goes up, preacher works the street. Come find Jesus at the meet and greet. Sell you heaven, then shake you from their feet. They'll raise the dead, they'll cure your gout. Pass the plate, take a pass on down, 'cause charlatans never change. Soothsaying in that holy name, fools burnt in holy flame. Oh, charlatans never change.
I want to thank Hellfire Agency for introducing me to a whole new category of music. Can I just say that song, Charlatans Never Change, it slaps. I don't care the connotation, but what connotation you like there. This song slaps. At the end of our episode today, we're going to listen to the whole thing because I finally have a version of Charlatans Never Change, which was always a complete and full song I wrote, now available. Let's watch these Mormons rant about Nick Shirley. Now, first thing you're going to need to know is this Nick Shirley, like this Minnesota-Minneapolis thing, it's still going on, and I have some updates on it. But what was really important to me this week is how the Mormon podcasters and YouTubers are losing their minds over their new Tim Ballard, Nick Shirley. I'm going to put this video back up there. Apparently.
We're done. We're done being tortured and hurt and judged. This is the correct religion. This is the religion that all of humanity needs to be a part of, Islam. And we will not stop until it enters every home.
Okay, so the people you see here are, I believe, Hayden Paul of Latter-day Saints and Dave Butler, who is a regular for, I'm going to be nice about Dave Butler. I'm going to be nice about both you brethren, okay? I'm just going to say this here. I'm going to be nice. But they're watching some footage that did not happen recently, as far as I know anyway. This was a while ago. They're watching footage to commemorate during the swearing in of Zohran Mamdani, perhaps the most mild and passive Muslim in the world. So, of course, they have to show this clip while he's being sworn in as mayor of New York on a copy of the Quran by Bernie Sanders, who's Jewish, if you don't know. Just saying. Let's go on.
I want you to repeat after me. I want to hear it in every single district. It should tremble. Brooklyn should hear it. The Bronx should hear it. La ilaha illallah. Muhammadan Rasulullah. There is no God worthy of worship except.
Look at the fear on their face, on their faithful faces. Look at the fear. This is concern. And you know what? Not unwarranted. I'm going to say this, okay? Your resident atheist here, very concerned about Islam. Not my favorite. Not my favorite. It is not. But these guys, these Mormons, I don't think you guys realize how you take it off the rails and then start criticizing it as if there is something unique about what they dislike about Islam. Let's go on and watch a little bit more of this.
Except Allah, the God of Jesus, the God of Moses, the God of Abraham, and the God of the last and final prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Says that that it is the true religion and they will not stop until it enters every home. And here's the thing that is just completely, what do we do as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? It's more of a tactic of forcefulness that you will submit to the God of Allah. It's more of a tactic of forcefulness that you will submit to the God of Allah.
Submit to you and pay the tax. This is, again, if I heard.
Hi. So basically, you got this criticism that Islam is too vulgar, too vile in how it uses the use of force to try and expand Islam. Now, if you're looking at the history of any religion over the course of 2,000 years, you're going to find violence and war used for that. Now, of course, Islam, is arguably not nearly 2,000 years old. Actually, they, of course, feel differently. That's fine, but it's nowhere. They often will say that of the Abrahamic faiths, it goes everybody is Jewish. Everybody is a sect of Judaism. More Christianity is a subset of Judaism, a sect of Judaism, and then Islam is effectively a sect of both. But I'm sure there are a lot of Muslims in the world who would not care for that description. But it's so, it is alarming to those of us who grew up in the West, but that's because we grew up in the West. And I have to remind you, in last week's episode, I showed footage of a January 6th protester who has been pardoned, apparently. Well, I think they've all been pardoned now. Traveling around with a pulpit that literally had the words Deus Vult on it, which is a slogan from the Crusades that was used by crusaders while they were killing Muslims. So it's like to say that Christianity is innocent of this same logic is patently absurd. And I'm going to say these guys, I mean, they lean into their fundamental belief that there is a difference between Christianity and Mormonism and as opposed to Islam, and that's why they're really upset that Zohran Mamdani was sworn in as mayor of New York and on a Quran.
Sister Johnson and Elder Jones, right? Saying this, I would say, no, that's not right.
Exactly. I was trying to give a little bit more benefit of the doubt, kind of more satirically, but thank you for reading into that.
Okay, so I brought up this about Nick Shirley now, and not, Nick Shirley actually puts on his show, on his program, different points of view on the conflict between, for example, Muslims and Christians here in America, and particularly in a segment in Texas where Christians brought pigs that they were like throwing around and holding up and saying, "This is your," I won't even repeat it. It was the most Islamophobic, racist crap I think I've ever heard, and yet intermittent with people who were attending this rally, cheering and shouting, and then stopping to make appeals to Nick and his supporters and his viewers, saying, let's not have violence, actually. And I thought that was good. I said before, I thought that was good that Nick covered that there were people, especially the Muslims, who were there counter protesting and saying, look, you're seeing these guys, including this guy they accuse of being a paid actor. I don't know that he is. I don't know that he isn't. I literally don't know enough about that guy. This Christian preacher who, apparently baptized men while he was in prison for allegedly, possibly attempting to coup and take control of the U.S. government. Anyway, I don't know that. I don't not know it. All right. Anyways. But let's go back and watch a little bit more of this, because I think it's interesting as we get into this. And I want to bring back this quote for those who didn't see it. I'm going to read you the quote again that shows these guys just apparently don't know their own religion. Okay, I'll be more fair. They could know more. All right, brethren. All right, let's keep going here. Let's maybe speed up a little bit here. I don't want to spend all our time more on Hayden Paul because we got Ward Radio.
Trade and commerce that was happening with Spain and Portugal and stuff, and in the Mediterranean Sea. There were some barbarians, some Muslim pirates that would basically plunder a bunch of ships that the British would have going through that strait. And to prevent that from happening, they would basically pay them off. They would give them a tribute.
Ish. So he's talking about what are commonly known as the Barbary Wars. This was when America was brand new. The Marine Corps was really formed, which, thank you for your service, Hayden. Hayden here is a Marine, so is his brother. He, by the way, at the end of his episodes where he talks about his experience in the service, tells people if you think you might go onto the recruiter and join the Marines, call me first and I'll tell you why you shouldn't. Which, fair point. I think he's a reservist. I'm not sure about that. But in any event, every once in a while they deploy or at least get called up to service. And so anyway, so he's talking about this story, that is enshrined, memorialized in the hymn of the Marine Corps song, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Also, by the way, that's also referenced in our godless hymn, American Union, in case you didn't know. You can find at yourcorahor.orgs everywhere. But he's talking about these Barbary Wars, and the first Barbary War, the treaty, really the first treaty that America signs after signing its treaty with Britain, effectively ending the Revolutionary War. And this treaty, he's going to kind of get it right, kind of get it wrong. And maybe he knows some things I don't, but from what I understand, really the treaty was a negotiation of exchange of hostages and who had been taken slaves during conflicts between merchant marines, effectively, or merchant ships, and these Muslim, I suppose pirates is correct. He at one point refers to them as barbarians. That is a pretty loaded word, I will say that. I mean, I understand that it was called the Barbary Wars, and that was also, it basically, once again, gentlemen, brethren, any time that we apply broad generalizations to any group of people that further reinforce their being marginalized, we are engaging in some form of supremacy, especially in a world where Americans do tend to have dominance in most sectors of the world. So we should always be mindful of that. Are we just taking marginalized groups and making them more marginalized? That being said, there are a lot more Muslims than there are Mormons in the world. So you could make the case that Mormons are being marginalized. I don't know that any Muslims are going on their way to do that, But it's very particular with these Mormons to point out all the reasons why Islam is
basically
BS.
just giving them a whole bunch of money and it's like, please don't hurt us. Okay. So that's what happened. And then the United States gained independence and we started to do our own trading and commerce over there. And the first presence of the United States, to avoid immediately getting into another war, they're like, okay, we will pay the similar tribute. But what happened was, even though they were paying a tribute to these Muslim pirates, they would still plunder and take over these ships and kill the merchants on them. And so it wasn't until about 1805 when Thomas Jefferson came into office in which he's like, all right, I'm done paying these pirates off. I'm done paying this tribute. And so we are going to go, we're going to build a navy and we're going to take some Marines over there and we're going to go kick some butt because this isn't right, that we should just keep paying these terrorists off to not kill and plunder our ships. And so.
Okay. Yeah, don't do it, Tim. Thank you. Don't do it on our channel, though. Don't do it here. In any event, okay. I just want to, and you're not. I don't think you're wrong, Tim. Thank you, Tim. Tim Rathbone, everybody. Look, okay. If you look at the actual treaty, that's commonly referred to as the Treaty of Tripoli, though I don't think it was signed in Tripoli. My understanding it was signed in France. I don't know that for sure. It's in Arabic. I'm looking for a picture of it. I wish I'd had more time after finishing the video to pull it up. It's beautiful. It's in Arabic calligraphy. It's in Arabic. And in that, the original treaty doesn't contain a very particular clause that gets left out of this. I won't spoil the rest of this. Oh, I'm just going to spoil the rest of the story and not show you the rest of Hayden's description of it because he doesn't quite get it right, in my opinion. But this is important, okay? This is what gets omitted from this story. There was a very important passage in the treaty that was signed to end the Barbary Wars. And that was not in the Arabic. They negotiated the exchange where America would give back hostages we had taken, they would give back hostages they had taken, and the difference would be made up for in money, mainly on our side because they had taken so many more than we had. And so America agreed to pay to get our sailors back and get our soldiers back. It wasn't a way of ending a war so much as a way of avoiding war, because the United States at that time believed that having standing armies was an oppressor's tactic. That's how King George had kept control over them. And so they didn't believe in having the equivalent of reservists necessarily. They believed in having militia. Today, I don't think that really would work. A National Guard seems to work much better. Having reservists does seem to be at least an effective tactic for winning in combat in the modern age. But we do live in a different time. But at the time, there was the exchange was that we would pay them and give them hostages that we had taken, and they would give us hostages back, and we would have basically a mutual non-aggression. It's like, look, if you'll let us continue to go about our business, we'll continue to continue to go about your business, and we just won't fight. And that was the agreement. When that treaty came back to America, because treaties under the Constitution have to be, the word is, it just escaped my brain. I had it like in my mouth. Somebody help me out with this. They have to be validated by the Senate. Validated is not the word. Endorsed is the word I want to use. That's not the word. In any event, the Senate has to sign off on a treaty before it becomes official. And the Senate had to have it translated into English because it didn't read Arabic. And while they were translating into English, the Senate, the U.S. government, voted to add a passage in there. And the passage they voted to add in there was, seeing as the United States is in no way founded upon the Christian religion. That was not required by the Muslims who signed that document. They didn't care. They didn't want to know. Ratified is the, thank you, Lisa. I can always count on you, Lisa. That's right. That the Senate had to ratify it, and they wouldn't do it until they had added that too slow to me, boy. We'll get Tim the credit too. It's important to Tim. and that it was important to the United States to establish once and forever that the United States has no interest in holy war. The United States has no interest in crusades or jihads. The United States is a secular nation founded upon principles of secularism. And that's what gets overlooked in this day and age. I think it very much to the detriment of everyone, regardless of the question of who out there, who is responsible for choosing if we decide to go to war or if we decide to engage in combat with somebody over a disagreement of something as petty as religion. You heard my words there. Petty. Let's skip ahead a little bit here, shall we? So it was a good exercise. Oh, but in any event, they were talking about how about how it would be frightening if there was any equivalent of that. Our religion is the true religion. We will enter into every home, which does sound. They do point this out, Hayden Paul, that we have 80,000 Mormons, have 80,000 missionaries around the world. I don't know if that number's accurate. Knocking on doors, trying to get into every home to spread religion in every home. But it's much different, he says, because we just go out there and say, here, read this. Maybe take it to God in prayer. When I was a Mormon, that is the way we spread Mormonism. To say that makes Mormonism fundamentally different than Islam is just not accurate. And because of this quote, that I wish I had time to prepare you a graphic, but in any event, here's the actual quote. It goes like this. Quote, if the people will let us alone, we will preach the gospel in peace. But if they come on us to molest us, we will establish our religion by the sword. We will trample down our enemies and make it one gore of blood from the Rocky Mountains to the Atlantic Ocean. I will be to this generation a second Muhammad, whose motto in treating for peace was the Al-Quran or the sword. So shall it eventually be with us, Joseph Smith, or the sword. You like the action? That is a quote by Joseph Smith Jr., the founder of Mormonism. Now, some people in the church claim you can't say that is a real quote because it's from it's collected that way in Fawn Brody's No Man Knows My History, a very good book. I would put to you a very good book, and that a man could grow closer to. No way, I'm thinking of a different book. Anyways, but Fawn Brody's book is a good book, and what she used to compile that quote, from my understanding, were the affidavits of 7 different individuals who were close associates. We have Tim Rathbone, who is an actual LDS historian, who can correct me if he knows differently. But in the comments, or you're welcome to pop up here, Tim. If you want to pop up here, I'll be happy to bring you on any moment. You just let me know, brother. I'll just send you the studio link. But of those that I know of, the actual testimony that was most important, in my opinion, was Thomas B. Marsh, who was an apostle in the Mormon Church and was a close friend of Joseph Smith, a close associate of Joseph Smith. And if you don't believe me, if any LDS people don't believe me, I will remind you that he is frequently quoted, especially when people talk about polygamy and these polygamy deniers. Again, I think polygamy deniers are wrong. I think their critical thinking standards are way off. But I try not to humiliate them or to say anything too negative about them, because the people who claim that Joseph Smith didn't start polygamy because they like Joseph Smith and they don't like polygamy, hey, at least they don't like polygamy. They don't like Mormon polygamy. They understand that it's human trafficking. And you know what? Let's build bridges there. Let's overlook the horrifically bad historiography and just go with whatever. You guys are against, you guys can finally come. We finally have Mormons who are willing to admit that polygamy is evil in their minds and in their eyes, and that they so evil, in fact, they want to disassociate Joseph Smith from it. Work from where we are, friends. Build bridges from where we are. In any event, I just thought I would remind you, if you were curious if a version of that statement about, we have to spread religion throughout the world because ours is the only true religion and there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his last and final prophet, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, that quote that I just read you, as true a quote of Joseph Smith's as I know, is just about as inflammatory, or if frankly not more. I don't recall any passage of the Quran or the Hadiths, or not that I know them terribly well. I've read a little bit, not nearly enough to be an expert, or really even that well acquainted. But from what I know, there is no passage that talks about making a river of blood, a continual gore of blood from the Rocky Mountains to the Atlantic Ocean, which, if you note, at that time was the whole of the United States and then some, and the frontier. So basically, Joseph Smith, during the war, the 1838 Mormon War, had made an interest, and 1838 Mormon War really all the way up until the Nauvoo Legion had made it pretty clear that he was perfectly capable and interested in spreading his religion by putting people to the sword and saying specifically, you will join our religion, or you will abide by our religion, or you will die. And that was his opinion, and that was how he lived. So when you call out Muhammad, fine. There's a lot to dislike about Muhammad, and the times when he was violent and did horrible things, I'm with you. I'm your brother in secularism on that. I'm your brother in the light of reason. I say call Muhammad out all day. But don't tell me that it's different from Christianity when you've got all the Crusades behind you. Don't tell me it's different from Christianity with the doctrine of discovery. Okay, maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit more. But in any event, so much for Latter-day Saints. I would love to show you some more clips of that, but well, maybe we'll just watch a little bit.
There are so many Muslims today who just do not want to be this. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So that's where we'll leave that off and go on to from Hayden Paul at Latter-day Saints to the recent broadcast, the live stream of Hayden Paul and this guy whose name is Kai Schwimmer. I thought I recognized him. Apparently does a lot of appearances on Jubilee. I don't know his exact association with Jubilee, but he's on Jubilee. And that's why I went, oh, yeah, that's where I've seen him before. I didn't know he was Mormon. I keep learning these people are Mormon. More people are Mormon than I realize. They are on Ward Radio, and as you can see, they're showing footage of the appearance of Nick Shirley on Patrick Bet David's podcast. We'll get into that in a moment. But I thought it important to share that one piece, so I'm glad I managed to bring it. Okay, Dave Butler, note that I did try to include some fairness here and just point out, he did try to point out that obviously not all Muslims feel that way. It does, however, make it sort of curious to me that we chose to even start this conversation on the day that Zohran Mamdani is being sworn in as mayor of New York, when that doesn't really have anything to do with Zohran Mamdani's politics. It doesn't have anything to do with his qualifications for office, and doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the man was duly elected by the citizens of his city to represent them, and frankly, at a time when they are leaderless. You know, Eric Adams turned out to be a real disaster. Did anybody hear me say that? It turns out Eric Adams was a corrupt SOB, and they needed something better. So they elected Zohran Mamdani, and for the most part, I look at him and say, "Look, my feelings, your feelings. I don't live in New York. I don't live in the state. I don't live in the city. Let them flourish. Let them show that they picked the right guy." But because he got up there and started talking about collectivism versus rugged individualism, mimicking the language of Bernie Sanders, who is very popular in New York, being from New York, and being that there are a lot of liberals in New York and progressives, he's basically mirroring the same language that made Bernie popular. And from what I understand, Bernie actually has taken an active interest in his political advancement, as he has done with others. So, look, why at this time when it's so politically charged, with Nick Shirley going out there telling the world, as he has done recently. If we have time, I'll pull up the interview. I think I have some clips of his interview with David Hogue. We'll get into that in a minute here. Every time that this conversation comes up about these daycare centers in Minnesota and Nick Shirley's expose about it that turns out to have been debunked. I am only one of many voices that came out to say, okay, well, this doesn't add up. Doesn't math with the government documents. It doesn't go mathing with the surveillance footage of some of these daycare centers. It doesn't go mathing with the news reports of news stations going into these classrooms to verify that there are actually children in them, and finding, lo and behold, Nick Shirley and his friend David, we now know as David Hogue, are full of shit. Okay, but it never fails that we have this conversation. But somebody turns around from the Mormon podcaster camp and says, and that's not Islamophobic to say. Okay, then don't say anything Islamophobic. And then they say something. And I'm just pointing it out. If you're afraid of Islam, you're Islamophobic. If you hate Islam, that's Islamophobic. And look, I wouldn't call myself afraid of it, but somebody could say Islamophobe to me, and I would look at them and say, you know what? If that's me, that's me. But at the end of the day, I'm an atheist. I don't say anything about Islam that I wouldn't say about Mormonism. I don't say anything about Islam that I wouldn't say about Christianity, although I do confess and admit not all religions are the same to me, and I don't consider them all equally dangerous. And I definitely don't consider Islam to be inherently more dangerous than any other religion in the world, nor do I feel it appropriate to paint with one broad brush every single person of an entire broad diversity of different kinds of religion. They're factions, they're different, there are sects, there are different ideologies that people from different regions of the world who are adherents of Islam adhere to. So anyways, let's go back to talking about Ward Radio. So last Friday, somebody correct my dates on this. It's been all a blur. This has been such a blur, guys. I still have another, at least one more, video to show you clips from. And like, I've been trying to throw all this together in a mad dash. Anyway, so this was Ward Radio. They had Kai Schwimmer and Hayden Paul on the show to watch a little bit of this interview with on Patrick Bet David. I'll just play a little bit of this and we'll get caught up.
Exactly how I wanted to come back, what kind of videos I wanted to do.
Where was the mission?
In Chile, Santiago.
And you said mission with the church?
Yes.
Which church?
I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints.
Let me tell you, man, that is such a massive edge.
Okay, I'm just going to call bullshit here, okay? That Patrick Bet David had Nick Shirley on his program and didn't know he was a Mormon is absolutely ludicrous. Patrick Bet David, have your people contact me. You won't. And it's fine. Look, bullshit. This guy knows where his bread is buttered. And right now, especially with all the controversy between Candace Owens and Erica Kirk and this Tyler Robinson controversy right now about Charlie Kirk, we're seeing that there are actually a lot more Mormons inside the MAGA movement, and particularly in the Turning Point USA movement, than people wanted to admit, would have liked to admit. And a lot of Mormons are very connected, have personal network connections into this conservative universe. And so the very fact that Nick Shirley got put on Patrick Bet David's program tells me he saw an opportunity to leverage in on some of these connections. Patrick Bet David is a very conservative Iranian refugee, Christian refugee, who fled Iran, I believe, during the takeover by the Ayatollahs. I can't say that with absolute confidence. I will say this. The man has had Richard Spencer on his program. I'm not saying we don't ever platform people we don't agree with, that you shouldn't. And he defended himself when he had Richard Spencer, the infamous neo-Nazi, the guy who famously came out to speak out against and rail against people who are so cruel as to advocate for punching Nazis, quote unquote. He said he had him on with Jewish people whom he apparently harbors strong dislike for, being a Nazi. And he said because we wanted multiple points of view, etc. But then I tell you, I turned it off. it was too much. There is, hey, come on my show and make a statement, or come on my show, let me interview you. And then there is, hey, let me push to everybody how much I think that you are not that unreasonable. And there are some ideologies that there has to be a line drawn that says, this is unreasonable. This before you can expose the sunlight, put sunlight on it, somebody has to come out to say, this is wrong. I oppose this. And not just, well, let's have a friendly conversation. You can have a friendly conversation, but call it out. So anyways, so he has Nick Shirley on. This does not mean Nick Shirley is a white supremacist. I covered before why Nick Shirley and other Mormons may be pushing white supremacy without even knowing it, right? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, Tim? Boy, oh gosh, I can't imagine. Wow, keep me on charge. Did this just happen? Anyways, yeah, exactly. Songs. I think I know what you're saying there, songs. But that's devastating, Tim. Keep me updated on that, would you?
Massive edge. So
yeah. Okay. So first off, yes. Let's go, dude. No hedging, no nothing. Just loud and proud. That was awesome.
This is what I'll say. And Kai and I were talking about this a little bit before the stream. I think we've been dogged on just for so many years that whenever someone that has like done something cool of like notoriety at all, and they say, yeah, I'm a member of the church, we all feel like just vindicated. Like, yeah, we are cool. We're
just like, he's the GOAT of all time for that. Yeah. Zero. And what I love is Patrick Bet-David.
Okay. I'm trying very hard, brethren, to not have my feelings hurt that you're not mentioning that your boy Exmo Joe served a mission in the Peru-Lima North mission, returned with honor 2 years. What? Where's mine? Where's my guys? Just because I'm now an atheist and the head of the Church of Korhor, no, I don't get any praise. Why aren't you happy about my having been Mormon in the past? What happened to us? Okay, I'm just gonna say this. Okay, so this bro fest is like gross, right? Can we just say that it's gross? But give them their thing. They feel macho, and they feel like they are right and vindicated, even though it's been debunked. These guys are making all this up. We're going to hopefully get to talk about the updates on this whole Minnesota daycare center that I was hoping to do a great episode this week of Charlatans Never Changed. It was just basically run off on Nick Shirley again. Charlie, I keep calling him that. Nick Shirley. I am sorry. I'm trying to be good. Oh, let's take this caption down and put up Word Radio. I don't think I have one for Word Radio. Oh, Ward Radio, you have made it onto my list. I don't know. Is somebody find out their handle? Is it Ward Radio? We'll just call it. Let's call it YouTube. Ward Radio. Cardinellis. What do we call it? Cardinellis Fan Club. Cardinellis Echo Chamber. Okay. So they're on this. They're on this program. They're talking about celebrating that they got their boy, Nick Shirley. Nick Shirley. Shirley, you must be joking. Shirley, his name is Nick Shirley. I'm going to get it, you guys. I'm going to get it. Was on this podcast when that really, I mean, I'm sorry to tell you here, brethren, it's not quite the flex that you want it to be. Frankly, I mean, he has all kinds of people on his show. I will say this. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson has been on Patrick Bet-David. I've seen, and I like him quite a lot, obviously. One of my favorites, I think he identifies as agnostic. David Pakman has been on there, gave a great showing. I think David's amazing, amazing progressive in any event. Very cool stuff. But, you know, Nick Shirley being Mormon and being on Patrick Bet-David, it's not quite the impressive thing that I would think. But these guys are really celebrating it, in spite of the fact that they're going to get into some pretty heavy topics here, where if I were still LDS, and had sentiments like mine, I wouldn't want somebody talking about the church this way.
Well, that's just, it's an average day, an average walk in the park.
But maybe that's why I've been excommunicated. In fact, it is, in fact, why I've been excommunicated.
Oh, another totally awesome epic-based guy is a member of the church. Par for the course. Not even surprising anymore.
Have you seen the new merch Nick Shirley's got of the Quality Leering Center 1-800-FRAUD? That is the most savage troll. Dude, they're never going to live that down, bro.
I wasn't going to do this. I launched a new version of our Godless hymn, Lick My Cupcake, today. I think it's pretty badass. I think you guys should go check it out. It's in our YouTube shorts. It's on my TikTok. It's on korahor.org. The new version will soon be on korahor.org, which has a whole new interface for the Godless hymns. You guys should totally check it out. In any event, soon we're going, if you guys want to talk about epic trolls, we're going to start selling again the t-shirts that say licked cupcake and lick my cupcake. And we're going to have ladies tank tops, like the old fashioned ring tank tops. You're going to love it. Anyway, we've decided we need to move some revenue into the Church of Korahor. Donations are of course always welcome, and hopefully will be the lifeblood. Memberships and donations will be the lifeblood of our movement. But frankly, at this point, we have some big projects coming up that we could use a little infusion of cash for. So we're going to start merchandising again. In any event, but just, look, this is not the flex that they want it to be. I want to move ahead here because this is not that interesting. Okay.
Got on my radar is when he just started going down to the big caravans that were coming over during the Biden administration. There's only one breed of suburban white boy that speaks fluent Mexican Spanish, like with the slang terms and everything. And I was like, yeah, that kid's Mormon. The question is whether it's Gilbert, Arizona or Provo, Utah. That's
okay. As an arguably Mexican American, but arguably white boy from Mesa, Arizona, how dare you? We got people who speak Spanish. Spanish is a beautiful language, and it does so happen that I grew up Mormon and that I did mainly master my Spanish while I was serving as a missionary in Peru. But that's not the point. We have Spanish-speaking white boys in Arizona. They're all over. I'm not even in Arizona, but I'm close. Phoenix. Do you want me to come down there? We should do some events. We're going to do, by the way, it's looking more and more like February, St. George. In February, we're going to have a mass resignation event that will also be a pretty cool event. Stay tuned for that. We're gonna be making some more announcements. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel because this is usually where I make most of the announcements. Also, follow us on Facebook. It's sometimes like a day or two behind when I get to Facebook. If I announce something, it's going to be on YouTube. So, in any event, this is pretty gross. I hope you're not talking about me songs. I hope you and I are friends. I hope you're talking about the boys.
The only question I had him
where he goes to with his partner, a local there named David. They did a bunch of investigative journalism to find these different daycares that a lot of them were almost stacked like right on top of each other in like these industrial parks.
That's where I thought, man, if the secret combinations ever get us, just like Ronald Reagan said when fascism comes to this country, it will be draped in the flag and in patriotism. I think when the
Okay. I'm not saying this isn't true. That could very well be. But that's not a Ronald Reagan quote. Even if it is something Ronald Reagan said, that is not a Ronald Reagan quote. Because if he said it in any way like that, he misquoted somebody who lived and died earlier than him. Well, at least died long before he did. And that was a man who wrote my favorite book, one of my favorite novels, Sinclair Lewis. And this is the actual quote. Sinclair Lewis, if you don't know, wrote a novel. He was an author who traveled in Europe during the rise of Mussolini and Hitler. And he saw what fascism had done. And he saw early fascism when a lot of people were still in love with it. I don't know if you know this, but there are reels of Mussolini speaking in English, where he sent reels to the United States to be played in movie theaters and cinemas, as they are known elsewhere, in theaters, to appeal to people, to Americans, and say, "Come to Italy. We know you love what you see here." And he would have like people. They had like footage of like Italians bringing sheaves of wheat out to the road and smiling and waving. There's food in Italy, which during the Great Depression was quite appealing. And this was a theory, a political governance that seemed to, its time had come in the minds of a lot of people in the world and even here in America. But there were high-minded people in America, liberals, who wanted to say, as we, liberals call each other out. I don't really consider myself a liberal so much as a progressive. Call each other out. We should call each other out. The problem with liberals is that they tend to be way overconfident that everybody agrees with them, and we have seen time and again how that doesn't work out. Okay, that everybody agrees with them at some point, just because people who disagree with them tend to go really quiet when they're not in power, and where liberals tend to be very noisy when they're in power or not, which I would say is one of the things to like about liberals, right? My opinion. But in any event, but he saw that high-minded liberals in New York, particularly, where he spent a lot of time when he was stateside, would say that could never happen here. Fascism could never happen here, they would say, because fascism, that's the kind of thing that silly Europeans might fall for because they are fill in the blank. And we Americans, we are wise, obviously, but get in a car, dude. Drive to some flyover country, not just because people are dumb or lazy or anything else. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying you get in a car and drive across this country, as I have done. I was shocked at how much diversity of opinion there was as I went through places like Oklahoma, which I would have thought, yeah, I know what happens in Oklahoma. I know what happens in Kentucky. I was so wrong. Get to know people. Okay, Luhog TV. Thanks for showing up. I don't know what that means. Pilgrims? Do we have pilgrims? Oh, you talking about the Buddhists? Gross, dude. Get lost, dude. Are you talking about the Buddhist monks who are out there marching for peace? Gross. I don't believe in Buddhism either, but I mean, let people live. Anyway.
And robbers come to screw the Mormons like the Book of Mormon predicts, it's going to be shrouded in niceness culture.
Thank you. And now I remember what I was going after. Adderall is with us. Who can be against his friends? And it is peaking. The quote goes, and maybe Ronald Reagan did have some variety of this where he stole from it. It wouldn't be the first time he did that. The quote actually goes, when fascism comes to America, it will be draped in the flag and carrying the cross. Read the novel. It Can Happen Here. I recommend it because it's a good novel. You happen to learn some interesting things about. If you happen to see something familiar, well, then you do. It can happen here.
You know what I'm saying? Like we won't even be able to reject it. So, all right. So we're going to the very, very first.
Tangentially, I mean, he's also done coverage. This is only coming out now, really, because now he's blown up. People are looking back at what he's done in the past. He also actually covered a story in Utah.
What attracts you to?
Okay, this isn't the story that guy Kai Schwimmer was talking about. It just made for a convenient, quick segue. Okay, so we're not going to go over. I haven't watched supposedly some video that Nick Shirley did about Utah being a sanctuary state. Okay, I mean I'll watch it sometime maybe. Frankly, I'm a little bit tired of this guy. The episode that I'm going to show you now is actually an episode where Nick Shirley interviews a guy, brings along kind of a co-host. There's a guy named Shane Baldwin from Zion Media. And here, let me go ahead and put up Nick Shirley's YouTube tag so people understand. This is, for commentary purposes only. And if you want to know more, go to Nick Shirley. There you go, Nick. Relax. This is an episode that they did, Nick Shirley and Shane Baldwin from Zion Media, who I actually like. Shane Baldwin may be one person who actually does see this. That I'll call out and say, Shane, when you see this and you won't, I actually am being tongue in cheek. You probably will. I don't love all the things that Shane is implying here. I don't love the dishonesty, Shane. And you can call me out. I'd be happy to have you on the program. Any of you brethren are welcome here at the Church of Cohort and Hellfire Agency. But especially Shane, because I actually think Shane Baldwin and his people over at Zion Media, his friends over at Zion Media, yes, even Latter-day Chad, are actually doing something pretty progressive, especially since you guys kicked Mitiga. I started following them because they were the people who were really following this. You guys are borderline apostates, okay? Mormon apostates who were just who've been chasing after this Davidic servant, even doing things like talking about that they would give away like a Series 3 Tesla or something like this to anybody who could introduce them to the Davidic servant. This is the servant, the Mormon servant that is supposed to usher in the end of the kingdom of the world. I put to you still is David Smith. David Hiram Smith, people don't talk about him because he lost his mind. In any event, but they are going to do a pretty dishonest coverage because this is what Nick Shirley does. He does BS coverage where he raises up the stakes to get a whole bunch of people riled up, in hatred of a group of people. I think probably this one didn't work quite as well. The place where they are is Colorado City, also known as Hilldale, Colorado City, Arizona, Hilldale, Utah. They went to basically the town that's been devastated not only by Warren Jeff's FLDS cult, but also, says Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. Okay, Luhak. I recant my chastisement. Sorry. Those of you who don't know, this is over on the mobile chat. You're welcome here, Luhak. Welcome. So they went down to Colorado City to interview the people who are still living in Warren Jeff's main polygamy town, since Warren Jeff has gone to prison. What is this, like 10 years ago or something, I think now? 2016, I want to say, yeah. So, and they did some interviews down there. Some of the interviews are interesting, although I don't know that they're big news anymore, but I don't know everywhere in the country.
Multiple sister wives.
I've got to go.
One reason.
Sisterhood, companionship.
How many sister wives do you have?
I'm not going to answer that.
No? Are you guys FLDS? I think he abused his power.
Well, he did definitely make.
Okay. So, those sisters that he was interviewing, polygamists are famously quiet and, well, at least in the presence of Gentiles. That's everybody who's not part of that group. The FLDS, they know they've been trained well from their youth to know that the world is the beast, and especially the government is the beast. And that's why you want to talk about fraud, and you don't want to talk about Nick Shirley's family engaging in fraud. That's a whole episode I just decided not to do. You're welcome. If you want to talk about fraud, taxpayer fraud in Colorado City, Arizona was rampant for decades. These people took $8 at one point. At least this is the way I remember it from the book, from Jack Krakauer's book, Under the Banner of Heaven. It was estimated that they took $8 in federal aid for every dollar they paid in taxes. And they actually talk a little bit about this. I don't think I clipped it into this clip. They, to their credit, Shane Baldwin points out, he's like, you see how many houses don't have doors on them? They just have like plywood up against the door. That's because they learned that they wouldn't have to pay property taxes if the house is unfinished. And the state of Utah knew, the state of Arizona knows that they are, that they're abusing the property taxes that way. They call it bleeding the beast. Thank you, Songs. Songs knows the stuff. Songs is brilliant, you guys. We get more content with Songs of our own. That's exactly right. They call it bleeding the beast. That was taking welfare and taking federal aid and state aid, just like these centers in Minnesota, the daycare centers in Minnesota. Is there some fraud in the system, daycare system in Minnesota? I'm sure there is, just as there is everywhere. And you're welcome. And but in Colorado City, it was systematic. There's no question about this. We have the internal instructions from the FLDS saying that all these women who are supposedly married need to go in and file as if they are single mothers so that they can qualify for food stamps and they can qualify for WIC and they can qualify for all these other things that are available mainly to victims of domestic violence or women who are single mothers, etc. And then it was so bad before the state government passed laws saying, well, look, we'll just decriminalize polygamy here in Utah, not saying that the government is going to solemnize polygamous marriages, but at least so that if somebody is in a circumstance where they are in a polygamous marriage, they can go to somebody and tell them and not fear that they'll get in trouble. And then all of a sudden, we've seen more people. They say there have been more people who have left the FLDS cult because of that one decision than any other. Even the Utah state government can it's like a stopwatch. It can be right twice a day. All right, here we go. So I thought it was interesting that Nick actually did go out there and interview these young men who are very nervous. They're young men from polygamous households and polygamous families, and one young woman.
Made polygamy go down and how it was looked at around the world because he violated it.
Oh, the question he had asked them was, how do you feel about Warren Jeffs? First young man said that he abused his authority. The second young man is now saying that he damaged the world's opinion of polygamists, and that was his sin, which I thought was a very telling thing. I want to go back. I want you to listen to this again. I without me stepping all over it.
Sisterhood, companionship.
How many sister wives do you have?
I'm not gonna answer that.
No. Are you guys FLDS? I think he abused his power.
Well, he did definitely made polygamy go down and how it was looked at around the world because he violated it.
And what did Warren Jeff do to violate polygamy, and what ultimately got him put behind bars? In a few decades, their cult leader, Warren Jeffs, at one point was on the FBI's most wanted list and now leads his church from a prison cell as he receives his revelations for what is left of his 80 wives and the remaining followers as he serves a life sentence after he was convicted of sexually assaulting 2 underage girls whom he considered his spiritual wives. Today, I'm taking you deep into the FLDS. And joining me is a fellow member of the original LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who is a host of a popular podcast called Zion's Media, who will help explain in depth the history of.
Okay, good. Just going to lead this next part off with this. Good show. I'm. Yes, it gets gross. It gets weird and gross, and frankly, a little culty. Forgive me, brethren. But Zion Media is interesting for me because it's an experiment. Shane Baldwin's program. I got involved in and started watching him to hate watch Chief Mitika. No updates if you either know Mitika or you don't. And now that Mitika is out of the picture, I think that they're more interesting than they ever were. And I will say this: these guys, they get on the verge, the edge of a new kind of Mormonism that's frankly, from an apostate, I'm just going to say, kind of apostate. It smacks of apostasy, but it's quite interesting the way these two men talk about the LDS, the Latter-day Saints, as if they are not both Mormon. Both of these guys are Mormon, but he tries to take a journalistic integrity approach to it, even though Nick is plenty proud to tell the whole world that he served a mission in Chile, that he is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Don't play it off sometimes in the video like you're an objective opinion. These guys are both lying for the Lord. You're welcome to come in and tell me otherwise. Either that or they just don't know their own history and they don't know their own story. But Shane's, I will say, Zion Media, worth looking at, because here's the thing that's interesting about it. You're not going to be convinced, at least I don't think so. You're not going to be convinced by what these brethren have found some new variety of Mormonism that appeals more to you. I don't think. Maybe you will. And blessings to you if that's the case. But what they show to me is what was exciting about Mormonism to begin with. If you look into the history of Mormonism, early Mormonism, everybody was a prophet. In early Mormonism, people were not just receiving revelations for themselves. That was something Joseph Smith introduced when his cousin started receiving revelations through his seer stone that was contradicting Joseph Smith's seer stone. Then all of a sudden, there could only be one prophet at a time. But that by the way, that cousin was one of the names of the testimonies of the witnesses on the Book of Mormon, by the way. And Joseph Smith ordered him to destroy his seer stone and destroy the revelations he received with it, even though his confidant and friend, and eventually the man he excommunicates from the church for claiming that he was committing adultery with Fanny Alger, Oliver Cowdery, believed that cousin's revelations to be legitimate. That was the way it was in early Mormonism. The reason why Mormonism blew up and got exciting right away from the beginning was that Joseph Smith's original vision for it was more or less kind of a place where everybody kind of received spiritual gifts, and then his ego wouldn't allow him, his malignant narcissism wouldn't allow him to let that continue. So this is why it's very interesting to me to hear these guys try and distance Joseph Smith and his successors and themselves from Warren Jeffs all throughout this whole thing. And it's frankly dishonest.
The FLDS. And before I entered into the FLDS capital, I wanted to know my history, as I am from Utah and have been interested to know where my history comes from and see if I have polygamy in my family tree like most Utahns. So I partnered with MyHeritage to take a DNA kit to
Nicholas, do you think any of us are going to buy into that your DNA is going to show that you have polygamy in your history, or that a Mormon kid has to go to his DNA through a sponsored link to MyHeritage in order to learn that he has polygamous in his family history? Dude, that was a stretch. I get that you got to make your bones. I get it. But that was gross, dude. By the way, from my understanding, MyHeritage, pretty much everybody who gets on MyHeritage finds out that they're mainly European, because apparently most of their samples come from Europe. I don't know that to be the case. It's just what I heard.
see where my DNA comes from and to track down my family. 128, room 129. Hello? This house, church, whatever it was, packed full of rooms.
This is just a sex house.
Room 128, there's ample.
You gotta love the music. I also do it. Yeah, you gotta put spooky music in. If you're gonna do like true crime type of stuff, you gotta put the spooky music. But here's the thing. Here you got these guys that are playing it off. This is like the daycare center thing. This is why this bothers me a little bit. Is it to go and set up a stunt like this? I get that there's only so much content to make out there in the world, brethren. But to go out there and to say oh, we just happened to go into one of these buildings where Warren Jeffs used to keep his wives, and we're going to see if there's anybody. Of course, there's nobody living there, or that if they know that it's a sober living facility, and they're going to go around to the empty parts of it, because how many people could possibly be there? And frankly, most sober living facilities, I mean, I don't know. I don't have the data to back that up. So I have some experience not with living in sober living, thank goodness, yet as of yet, but I have seen some of the inner workings of sober living, and it's a mixed bag. Apparently there are some really good ones, but there's also a lot of it is pretty sketch. It's pretty sketch.
What is this place?
Dude, this is just a sex house. This is like where they would house all of their wives. And I don't know if it was by lottery, but he's like, 128's up. And he would go in there, and I don't know how many kids Rulon Jeffs has and Warren Jeffs has, but it's hundreds and hundreds, I'll bet.
Can you imagine these hallways used to be filled with
Somebody scrub my brain of Warren Jeffs wandering through his sex house and going 128's up. Oh, why'd you got to do that, Shane?
Kids running around. Oh my gosh. I feel so sorry for these. Like, who lives like this? I'm getting dizzy in this place.
And these halls just keep going. Now we're back to room 5, but we're on the 2nd floor now.
Hello? It feels like a church. I mean...
Okay, does anybody else notice what I'm noticing here? Anybody else see what I'm seeing here? The comments that are being made here while they're doing this. Oh, it seems so creepy. Can you imagine little kids running around all over through here? It's got like a weird vibe. It feels like gross. But it also kind of feels like a church. And it's like without saying, it feels like our church. It feels like our history. It feels like, if you have history like this. I'm going to mention this because it's going to become relevant here in a minute, okay? In the conversation that these brethren are going to have, okay? The guy, Shane Baldwin, did I say I like this guy? Generally, I like this guy, okay? And I appreciate that this man has done his time. A lot of this, Nick Shirley's whole thing mainly is about immigration and fraud and exposing this, right? And the guy he's walking around there with is proud to identify himself as, quote unquote, the Mormon Wolf of Wall Street, because he wrote a book. This looks weird. That he wrote a book about how he basically converted to Mormonism while he was in prison after running a real estate scam, a real estate fraud in Salt Lake. And so that's important to keep in the back of your mind as they start talking about what's going on here. They're going to start talking about Warren Jeffs and so forth. Every time that they do this, I just want to point this out. Anytime you say you base somebody's credibility on whether or not they have been an inmate or whether they have been whether or not they have been a criminal in the past, okay, that's where your feelings are. That's where your bias is. But let's check for critical thinking here. Let's check for our bias and say, okay, a person can go to prison and be a good person. It's totally possible. It happens all the time. A person can go to prison and be smart. A person can go to prison and not be wrong about what they believe in. Remember that some of the best writing, frankly, ever was done from Birmingham jail. Okay, so not everybody who goes to jail or prison is a bad person. Warren just happens to be the exception. But when you start to throw, who is in prison now? This is where we start to expose the bias.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Is this sober living?
No.
Is this just rooms for rent?
No. This is for, like, an apartment.
What was this place?
It was a house.
Oh, wow. It feels like a church or something.
For Warren Jeffs.
Somebody should look into this. It says it's sober living, but she just said it's apartments.
It's just apartments. And she looked like she was, like, not doing well. Personally, she was all, like, huddled up in a blanket. It smelled weird in there. Like, I got bad energy.
Yeah.
I got heartburn right now. And so whenever I get heartburn, I'm like going, okay, there's something not right here.
We know that Warren Jeffs probably inherited everything from his dad, so this is one of his places. We know lots of things did go down here, according to the allegations of Warren Jeffs. So, like, I personally don't feel that great in here, like the spirits or whatever.
Okay. Hi, Nick. You ever been to the Beehive House? You ever been to the Salt Lake City Temple? You ever been to the Endowment House? You ever been down into the St. George Temple down here in southern Utah? Polygamous marriages took place all over there. And they involved women of all ages, including some who were not women, who were young, who were girls. Look up Lorenzo Snow, buddy. You think that there's going to be a lot of claims you guys are going to make here. Okay? Joseph Smith was just the beginning, but Joseph Smith was the beginning. Fanny Alger matters. I grew up, I'm just to say this as an aside before we go and we fast forward a little bit to this next part where they talk about Zion, Shane's favorite subject, one of mine actually too. Um, oh, I don't know about that song. So that's a good point. Maybe that's true. I'll have to look into that. I'll have to look into that. Anything you can send me. Song sends me great stuff. It's great research. Um, but uh, oh yeah. Any Mormons, ex-Mormons in the chat right now or in the comments in the future? Don't tell me what happens. I don't want to know. Hop in there to mention if you agree. Throw out an amen or throw out your experience. I grew up having heard the story of Joseph Smith being tarred and feathered in Hiram, Ohio, and while he was staying in the Johnson family home. And we were always sold, I was always sold on that. The reason why Joseph Smith was tarred and feathered by his neighbors, who weren't even really his neighbors, he and his wife and children were staying in the home of the Johnson family. And while they were there, my understanding is that they were looking at the possibility of establishing a temple out there. I'm not sure how true that is. That's what I remember off the top of my head. But that the reason why they tarred and feathered him and Sidney Rigdon was because of Joseph Smith's strange beliefs and his strange claims about the Book of Mormon. Everything in modern Mormonism about the persecution of the saints was related back to the Book of Mormon, and people believing that the Book of Mormon wasn't true because there is an almost fanatical level of devotion in modern Mormonism to the Book of Mormon that I don't think is entirely, frankly, representative of the feelings of the church at all point in time, but I can't say that for sure. When in reality, at least some reason exists to believe that a man named Eli Johnson, who, as far as I know, I don't know if anybody knows who he is, if he really exists, but at least somebody in the Johnson family had conjured up or led this rabble, this mob who dragged Joseph Smith out into the middle of the night on the night that his son, John Murdoch Smith, fell sick and then eventually passed. It's a very sad story. And was tarred and feathered and threatened, at least in some versions of the story, with castration, that they were going to tie him to a board and they were going to castrate him. For the Book of Mormon? Really? For the Book of Mormon? That seems like, even for the 1800s, that seems pretty weird. That's harsh. It's not until later in other drafts, from what I understand about the story, that the Johnson family, that at least somebody in the Johnson family knew that Joseph Smith was having an affair with Miranda Johnson, who I believe at that time was 14 years old. They don't know. It might be true. It might not be true. But there is at least enough to say there had to have been some suspicion, because Miranda Johnson, who was just a young girl when Joseph Smith was at that home in Hiram, eventually does marry Joseph Smith, and in probably one of the most controversial plural marriages of Joseph Smith. Somebody call me out. Am I wrong? This is Orson Hyde's wife eventually. And if you know, you know. So this is before Fanny Alger, from what I can remember. So, right, this is like 1832, 1833, something like this. This is before Helen Mar Kimball, the famous, a few months shy of her 15th birthday, is the way that the Mormon Church describes Joseph Smith's plural marriage to Helen Mar Kimball. This is before the Partridge family, the Partridge sisters. This is before Nancy Rigdon and the controversy around her. Okay, you can't just write off how similar Warren Jeff's story is to Joseph Smith's. Okay, I've said it before. I'll say again until somebody can prove me wrong. Name me one thing that Warren Jeffs went to prison for that Joseph Smith didn't also do. I think somebody put on my Facebook comments once about that, said drove an Escalade. All right, except they didn't, as far as I know, he didn't go to prison for that. But fair enough. That's about it. Okay. but to say nothing of Lorenzo Snow, Wilford Woodruff, John Taylor, Helen Mar Kimball's father. Oh my gosh, there's a scandal and a half. You can go down the rabbit hole of Mormon men in Mormon polygamy marrying children and child brides all the way into the modern century, and to say, well, these ones are FLDS, so we don't approve of them. Therefore, it didn't, it isn't relevant to what the LDS are doing. And time and age, by the way, with Russell M. Nelson, a polygamist was prophet up until recently. My understanding, my recollection is right. Even Dallin H. Oates is a polygamist in the spiritual sense. This is the reason why Karen Hyatt was excommunicated, was it not? Someone told me no. Okay. The Mormon Church will excommunicate you for saying too loudly or publicly that Joseph Smith didn't practice polygamy. It's central to their tenets that this practice started with Joseph Smith and that it was a sacred practice, the same one that Warren Jeffs engaged in. You can say but Warren Jeffs wasn't what? He wasn't authorized. How many polygamous marriages happened under Wilford Woodruff that would have been off the books in the colonies in Mexico or in California? Come on, fellas. Let's keep honest. That's a little preview to where we're going here.
Is it weird off in here? Whatever is going on here is
right?
off.
Yeah.
And so, but think about it. This could have been a place where children were molested or raped.
Totally. This could have. There's some stuff that went on here, and you and I are both feeling like uneasy.
The vibes were not there.
Vibes are not good. But Warren Jeffs, Rulon Jeffs. I mean, they were the prophet of the FLDS.
And look at the compound that they built out here.
Yeah, they were like the kings of this town. They were literally like that. This was their kingdom. They were the kings, even though they were the prophets. So they used religion.
Okay. Let me finish.
As a way to acquire all of this stuff. So all of the members were giving them the money, and they were building all this stuff. They had plenty of wives, and they.
Okay. Once again, did anybody hear any of this? Amanda, hi. Fair enough. Amanda knows her stuff, by the way. If you guys don't know Amanda, she's a researcher. She is and a brilliant person. But I will say this. What did you just hear Shane say about the kings of Colorado City that wasn't true about Joseph Smith and the brethren, particularly in Nauvoo, but to some extent going back to Missouri? Okay. It's not mainstream knowledge among all the Latter-day Saints now. It's been basically swept under the carpet as far as the general populace of the church knows. But there was this thing called the Council of 50. And the Council of 50, Joseph Smith was ordained, had himself crowned a king over the whole world, and other kings, that were subsequently ordained and crowned to rule the world during the millennial reign of Christ, is my understanding of it. And to say, this happened in Nauvoo, yeah, but there are records. Again, someone call me out if I'm wrong. They extend all the way well into Utah, the westward expansion from Nauvoo over into Utah territory, where they had meetings of the Council of 50. They had, offices and titles that they would refer to each other by. And king was not unlike them. Even some aspect of that relationship is still exists today in the Mormon endowment ceremony, where every Mormon man is technically a king, and every Mormon woman is technically a queen and a priestess to the Most High God. And this all goes back to this idea that under the law of consecration and under the United Order, everybody was supposed to submit everything that they give to the church. Unless it's changed, maybe it's changed. There's been a lot of change to the temple. When I went through the temple, and every time I went to the temple, we raised our hands, we made the sacred symbols, and we vowed to abide by the law of consecration, which is that all that the Lord, with which the Lord has blessed you, or with which the Lord will bless you, you will be willing to give to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That everything you own, never mind tithing, everything you own is technically property of the church. At one point in time, they lived that and practiced it. And you know, to say, well, Warren Jeffs corrupted that and practiced a form of it that is corrupted and twisted. No. In this for the building of the kingdom of earth. Hey, so how you doing? Is it so? I call you so B. Hey, welcome here. Yeah. Okay. When Warren Jeffs and the FLDS believe that they are practicing Mormonism as it was in its purer form, if the pure form is the way it was practiced in Nauvoo or or more particularly in Missouri, they're right. Or to some extent in Ohio, they're right. Or and these brethren are lying for the Lord. I know. Okay, I don't know. I strongly suspect both of these men, these brethren in the Lord, know that this is true. They know a lot of doctrine.
Look, doing it all in the name of God.
And Shane, what does Zion mean for somebody that's not well known with the LDS religion or with the faith of Mormonism?
Well, listen, if you've watched The Matrix, they called it Zion, right? Zion was a place of refuge. Zion was a place of safety. Zion was a place of peace. And they have bastardized that use of that word by saying, this is Zion. Here, come live in this compound, have many wives, lots of kids, and this is God ordained, and this is what they would call Zion. For me, this feels like hell. But they brain.
Me too. I would feel the same way though if I'd have grown up where Mitt Romney's dad, George Romney, grew up in Mexico in the Mexican colonies. I would have polygamous colonies. I would have felt the same way had I grown up in Cache Valley, Utah, where my family's from, at a time when my great uncle Joseph Lafayette Rollins became a politician who left the church over his father's being forced to practice polygamy, and eventually went to negotiate the end, at least a legalistic end to polygamy, to get statehood for the state of Utah, which at one point in time, Brigham Young, from what I understood, said he didn't even want.
Watch these people to have them believe that this is Zion. This is not Zion. Isaiah.
Isn't it though? I mean, by Mormon doctrine, is it not?
It talks of Zion being a place of peace, of refuge, of safety, where God dwells, essentially.
Feels more like a place of torture here.
Yeah, it does.
I've got to go.
One reason.
For nothing, apropos of nothing. Throughout the rest of the standard works of the Mormon Church, Zion is described as a place where everyone was of one heart and one mind, and there were no poor among them. This written in documents that were contemporary to Karl Marx, but before Karl Marx wrote Das Kapital, as far as I'm aware, or before he wrote the Communist Manifesto, because all of this communism as a concept isn't Russian to originate, and it isn't even American. It goes back to Utopia. It goes back to the New Testament and the apostles asking people to hold all things in common, and God killing a couple who refused to do it, to abide by it. This has been, a couple thousand years in the making. There's been people talking collectivism, and Joseph Smith believed in it, and Brigham Young believed in it. The fact that we live in the age of Ezra Taft Benson's Mormonism, when communism is considered evil, is very much contradictory to the Mormonism as it started. To say that no, we have the original Mormonism, the FLDS, and practicing their little communism, their polygamous communism, they've corrupted it. Not true, dude.
sisterhood, companionship.
How many sister wives do you have?
I'm not gonna answer that.
No. Are you guys FLDS? How many wives would you like to have?
As many as God will give you.
And do you one day want to be married to one man with multiple wives?
Yes.
Yes. And what makes you want to be married to a man even though he has multiple wives?
Our religion. It's because it's just we believe in plural marriage.
And your message to Warren Jeffs?
I obviously don't support anything he's done. Can't condone any of that. Yeah, I mean, I think what he's done is a perverted twist on correct.
These kids are all feeling really called out here and really put on the spot. Nick, I don't know about this, man. I don't know that this was smart. I'm not going to say otherwise. I mean, it's interesting content, but frankly, what is he going to say? Oh yeah, no, I support everything. Okay, sorry, did you go and see the gentleman in the patrol car over there? I mean, what else is he going to say? Of course, that's what he's going to say. And these kids, they feel really pressured, obviously, because they've been raised their whole life to not be ashamed of being polygamous, but to also not cast their pearls before swine. And Nick Shirley, LDS boy, with his YouTube channel and his phone and his little microphone, that's definitely, this is definitely writing the gray area of their, wanting to be proud about their faith, probably, maybe, but at the same time having to be careful to protect their community and their families.
I think he abused his power.
Well, he did definitely made polygamy go down in how it was looked at around the world because he violated it.
And what did Warren Jeff do to violate polygamy, and what ultimately got him put behind bars?
It is death.
Shane, so what's the difference between the FLDS and the LDS?
Well, number one, the LDS no longer practice polygamy. That's
wrong. Mormons don't practice temporal polygamy that we know of, and they did continue practicing polygamy even after they apparently stopped the practice, and nobody has called, as far as I know, has called out those marriages as illegitimate. They just stopped doing it once they got caught.
I would think the biggest difference. So the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons.
Hey, Songs is doing the good research, you guys. I got good friends here. This I did not know, and the house apparently that they went to inspect, that woman who had said that it's like apartments, and they said we heard that this was sober living. Apparently, Songs is saying that definitely is a house that's being used as transitional housing for people who are leaving the FLDS. Brethren, I'm gonna check. I'm gonna double check this because Songs has already sent me the information on to check later. But I can tell you this right now: if Songs says it, it's probably true. It's certainly true. But Nicky, why you gotta lie? Don't tell lies. It's weird enough. There's plenty that's weird enough, and there's no reason to tell lies.
Decided no longer to practice polygamy in 1890. Now, prior to that, they were practicing.
Okay. That's not true, Shane. That the revelation from Wilford Woodruff was that men would go to prison leaders in the church would go to prison if they continued to practice polygamy, and so to stop. And yet, even he continued to practice polygamy and meaning to seal himself and others to plural wives, and to send people to continue to do it, all over the country. So, and in Mexico and Canada, I believe, right? So, that it was well into the 20th century that they continued to practice it in the LDS church. It doesn't stop on a dime like that. Okay, so.
Polygamy. And so polygamy was instituted in the late 1830s in the Mormon church, and by about 1890, it was a disaster. You can imagine it's a problem. Ultimately, what happened is there were some people that were like, hey.
Okay, you heard that, right? I'm not the only one who heard that. This is an increasingly popular opinion among Mormons, and I'm going to just be blunt with you guys. It's false. But I'm here for it. Let's totally lean into the values of it, even though I do think that the historicity is wrong. And look, the fact of the matter is, polygamy was a great success at doing exactly what Section 132 expected it to do, which was to produce a lot of babies and to produce big families and to concentrate power to a handful of men who were regarded as holier than others, and even women holier than others based on how many children they had, how big their households were. And that is a thing that you know full well. That is a standard that still permanences somewhat in culture today, even though I will say younger Mormons, as more of them I meet, it does seem there's a new culture rising, and I love it, of millennials and Zoomers and whatever else they're called, Generation Alpha, who say who are perfectly happy to have small families and to admit they fear polygamy, don't want polygamy, don't believe in polygamy, and even that they believe polygamy, including Mormon polygamy, is evil. How long before the church either has to change its mind and agree with them, or decide they just can go on without them, or it just becomes more likely, it just becomes a don't ask, don't tell type of thing.
I kind of like this polygamy thing. And so they broke off and ended up in this area in Colorado City. They're now known as the FLDS, but their ancestors started out as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they consider themselves like the purists. They consider themselves the ones that are living the law.
All true, Shane, my boy. Good job. Good job. That section, all true. Also omitted here is the members of the Apostolic United Brethren, AUB, the Kingstons, the what's his buckets? Oh, I never remember the names. The Dream Mind guy. Okay. There were all these varieties, the Laffertys. There are all these Mormon polygamists that have traced back their origins to the same LDS church, their same membership in the church, the same doctrine, same teachings. And the difference between those people and these and modern Latter-day Saints is frankly that these guys believe in the doctrine as it is in the scriptures and as it was practiced in the church's origins, in the church's original time. Well, at least dating back to Nauvoo and arguably back to Ohio. They're practicing it the way that the doctrine teaches to practice it. And your idea is basically the president newsroom version. If it's not on the church's website, it's not doctrine. If it's not something that the prophets have reiterated in recent conferences, it's not doctrine. And even then we see stuff that they learn. Yeah, no. The LeBarons, the all red group. Exactly. Thank you, Sons. It's a whole topic in and of itself. And all these Mormon polygamists, to say any of them have corrupted the doctrines of the church, maybe, yeah, certainly somewhat. You would expect them to. As much as the LDS church has done, no. And you know what? It's a good effect. The further you can get away from Mormon polygamy, the better. And at least I hope we can agree on that. There you go.
That was given to Joseph Smith, and that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is currently in apostasy, and they are actually doing what God has commanded them to do.
Even though they're
excellent. Spot on, Shane.
Their prophet, Warren Jeffs, is in prison.
Even though their prophets and in prison, they still think they're on the right path.
And you
I just want to mention this real quick because that's the end of our video there. And that last little sly smile you'll have seen with Shane giving Nick Shirley there is him kind of, well, maybe I'm reading too much into this, Shane. You tell me I'm wrong. It's him looking at him with this face that says, dude, I went to prison. Okay. Doesn't mean that, and he's not terribly proud of it. He's ashamed of it, it seems to me, or at least he's remorseful about it. And he admits that he did wrong. And that's why I've said, don't throw somebody in somebody's teeth, whether they're right or wrong, based on whether or not they got sent to jail or to prison. If he did his time and he wants to move on with his life, well, if we believe in justice, then we have to give them the chance. And I think that Shane has done that, but to say that Warren Jeffs is wrong or bad or that he is corrupt because he got thrown in jail for it, frankly, doesn't track. I talked about this, that is it George Buchanan went to prison for practicing polygamy? Anybody call him apostate for that? The whole point of stopping polygamy was supposed to be to keep the brethren out of jail. Okay, let me see if I can pull up this file. I know I took a recording of this conversation that Nick Shirley did with his buddy David. Chain. No, it's not anymore. Radio. Jay Saints. Charlatans never changed. Charlatans Nick Shirley mobile. I team a follow up. It doesn't look like I did. Anyways, we'll just stop. We'll just wrap up here. Maybe I'll bring this up. Yeah, I think I'll bring this up just for fun. This is just a quick clip. I thought this would make an interesting experiment in critical thinking. You guys like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? Watch this.
Have more than one
multiple
city.
No. We're comfortable with the idea of travel lately. Like, check this out. Did you guys know that Pittsburgh is in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Yeah. Now think about that, though. That's crazy. Like 2 cities in one state?
No, that's not crazy.
No, not at all. No. All right, I don't think you understand. There's 2 cities in the same state. Like, how's that even possible?
All states have more than one
multiple
city.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
There's Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
So that's what Pennsylvania is.
Oh, no.
Oh, so Philadelphia's not Pennsylvania?
No, Philadelphia is in Pennsylvania. What is this man talking about?
I'm saying, how's Pittsburgh work? Am I constantly going in and out of Pittsburgh throughout the day? Yes or no?
No.
Well, explain this to me.
Oh, I understand. I think I understand what
Finally, somebody
he's
gets
saying he
it.
wants to go on a vacation.
Yeah, well, yeah.
He wants to go somewhere exotic.
Yes.
He wants to go to Fire Island. He wants to go to Greece.
No,
he wants to experiment.
That's
He
not
wants
what
to
I'm
try
saying.
new
No,
things.
That is not what he said. We're not going to Pittsburgh.
Because we're already there.
We're not in Pittsburgh. We're in Philadelphia. This is not easy.
I've actually been getting a lot more comfortable.
In any event, I thought of this while I was working on this segment with Nick Shirley talking about fraud, and I'm like, it's so hilarious to watch this guy. It'd be hilarious if it wasn't infuriating to watch this guy dance around the fact that he doesn't know what he's talking about, doesn't need to know what he's talking about, because his buddy David, who I thought that was a fake name, was the one who did all the research and gave him the times. They plotted out the times of when they were going to go to visit these daycare centers in Minnesota, to rattle on the door as if in America, post Sandy Hook, you could walk up to a daycare and rattle on the door and expect to go into a daycare center. I say it again, time again. I'm going to keep calm. If you didn't know that daycare centers lock their doors these days, it's probably because you don't have children. And if you thought you could just walk into a daycare center in America, throw open the door and waltz in and say, "Where them kids at?" I'm glad you don't have kids. And frankly, I hope that you'll stay away from daycare centers, especially where my kids are. So in any event, it's startling to me. In any event, but it turns out I'd made a big hullabaloo at one point about Brooke Shirley, who is Nick Shirley's mother, who travels with him. I have those clips. Maybe I should pull that up. Nobody wants to see that. We'll save that for another day. But she does interviews with him on Newsmax, and has done for the past couple of years, where she's proud to present his work in interviewing immigrants and talking about immigration. Okay, fine, except that then they start throwing out some really, frankly, racist and untrue things about immigrants. There was, for example, Brooke Shirley, she has become kind of a standard guest on Newsmax and far-right podcasts. Oh, sorry, I have to decline the call here. On far-right podcasts. Let me see if I can disconnect that. on far right podcasts talking about all sorts of wild things about. Sorry, I'm just trying to see it because she will call back. Let's see if that does it. Anyway, that didn't do it. Talking about, for example, that there was during the Obama administration and Biden administrations an app that allowed undocumented immigrants to bypass the immigration system and illegally immigrate to the United States. It's not true. In fact, it's the exact opposite of the truth. The app that she's talking about there is quite clearly an app created by the immigration enforcement to streamline the process of allowing people to legally immigrate to the United States. And so, they go out there and they perpetuate these lies about it. And there's the same thing with this caravan concept of the caravans of immigrants and people. They're not sending our best. They go out, they push these narratives. They don't care. They obviously don't seem to care who they hurt. And it's extremely dangerous. Okay. I'm just going to touch on this lightly today because I feel compelled to do it, especially today when I'm sure no small measure, due to the increased presence of immigration enforcement in Minneapolis, a woman today lost her life sitting in her car. Whatever their excuse for why they felt it had to be done or why they will defend that it had to be done, we now have a mayor of a major city in this country, in the same city where Nick went out and knocked on these doors and started crying fraud and talking about immigrants this and immigrants that, and reinforcing all these racist stereotypes about immigrants. Now they had this stepped up immigration enforcement as if that's not going to have any problems. Now a woman is dead. How long? How long before it's everywhere? So sorry, I'm being notified. Basically, I'm on the graveyard shift right now. So in any event, look, at the end of the day, we are all Charlie, not Charlie Kirk. We're Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's like we all have. There are things that we don't know. Okay, not to sound too Donald Rumsfeldish. Donald Rumsfeld. Yeah. Anyways, there are things we don't know, and of that we're pretty innocent. There are things that we don't know, and it should be beholden to us more or less to at least be curious enough to say, I would like to know, and to try and expand our knowledge so that we can especially so we can make more responsible decisions, especially when it comes to things like policy. But then there are things that we know we don't know because we choose not to know, or because we choose to ignore it. And this is where cognitive dissonance, which is nothing more than just having two conflicting ideas in your brain at the same time, is a natural part of everyday life for absolutely everybody. Everyone has cognitive dissonance. When it gets toxic is when important decisions have to be made. Is when, and in a country where we can all vote, or most of us, in a country where we can all educate each other and we can inform each other and have better conversations with each other, it's extremely important so that we all understand and make more informed opinions and more informed decisions, that we ask ourselves, what are the things that we just think we believe? Like, you can't have two cities in one state. It might be embarrassing to admit that you don't know something, okay? But sometimes that humiliation has to just be something, that embarrassment just has to be something they're willing to do. And I can do better at it. We can all do better at it. That's the nature of critical thinking. When people say, don't say I don't know how to do critical thinking, and I say, great, tell me about critical thinking. This is what I hope to hear. I challenge my own biases. I ask myself, what do I already believe? And what is the belief that I would expect confirmation bias to confirm? And if I come to that conclusion, I know there's at least some possibility I did the thinking wrong. That's why Carl Sagan's baloney detection kit from the demon haunted world serves us so well. First principle of which is extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Does that sound right? It may be right, even if it feels wrong to you, right? Is it possible that Philadelphia and Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh are both in Philadelphia? I mean, that's crazy, right? That's all of us. We are all Charlie. I looked up some facts. I wish I'd pulled up that list. Maybe I still have it somewhere. Anyways, I had asked Google. I said, "What are some basic facts that you think that Americans think they know about America?" And it turns out that we have the wrong idea. And I was looking for stuff that was really controversial. It gave me stuff that was pretty benign. It said, for example, did you know that on the Liberty Bell, Pennsylvania is spelled with one N? I said, what? I think this is where I got the Charlie thing, the Always Sunny in Philadelphia clip. I'm like, I should pull that up. Is it really? And I looked at it. Sure enough, Pennsylvania is spelled with one N. Turns out back then, you could spell Pennsylvania either way. I didn't know that, or if I did, I didn't remember it. I saw this claim that said that you could put concrete, that if you took the concrete in the Hoover Dam, you could line it up. You could make a line of concrete from one side of the country to the other, just with the concrete that's in the Hoover Dam. I told that one to my dad. I didn't know that. But it does make sense to me because I've been to the Hoover Dam and I've been inside the museum there and seen the photos of the construction. And I'm like, dude, yeah. I mean, if you've been there, that's not surprising. That's, if you'd only ever seen photos of it, never been there, that might be surprising to you. But let me tell you, it is not surprising if you've actually seen the Hoover Dam and been, especially if you've been inside the visitor center they have there. The thing is massive. And you don't see most of it, frankly. Then I mentioned that to my dad, who's here. I'm staying at my folks' place while I'm in Utah before I head out to Virginia soon. And my dad said, "Did you know they had to put tubes that it would take them like over 100 years to cool all that concrete? So they put tubes of cold water built into it to cool it so that it would harden faster." It's wild. Okay, okay, good. When I said, what is the thing that most people in America don't understand? The first thing that I thought of is, or that people believe that they did, that is not true. I have to say, this was my thought. I thought for sure, this is the thing that we don't all agree on. And that is, frankly, true. In in some variation of what all my friends here are saying. I also feel this, that we are on stolen land, that this nation wasn't just made by immigrants, it was made by conquerors. It was made by colonizers. It was made by oppressors. I won't say that I don't love my country. I won't say that. But I can tell you this, my love for my country is much more nuanced since I got an educated opinion, a more educated opinion about it. And I get why we make up fables and we make up legends about how America was founded and where America comes from. But it's important to know these things the way that the system wants us to learn it, but also to know how the system decides what we learn, where the profit motive comes from. How profits for textbook companies and resistance from state governments like Texas shaped our whole understanding of the world. How the Red Scare shaped our whole understanding of the world. The lies we were told about the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. It's astounding what we were lied to about. Not that I think that living in the USSR would have been better for me at the time. No, certainly not. No, but I was startled when I learned that, if you go out and interview people in the former Soviet Union, depending on where you go, you'll find people who still pine for the days of the Soviet Union. They loved it. They thought it was great. And life under capitalism not worked out so well. And so, which seems like, once again, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Wouldn't you expect that if people had lived their whole lives under communism or under socialism, that they might miss it when they turned to rugged individualism and collectivism started to diminish. At the same time, I'll tell you another one that I think that people don't really realize, that we don't know enough about, and that most Americans could do better at, is I don't think people understand how democracy and socialism were absolutely paired at the hip from the moment that socialism was terminology for socialism. That's a thing that you don't get told. I certainly wasn't told in my generation coming up, that to be democratic and to be socialist were basically perceived at one point in time as the same thing, especially when people were going hungry without food stamps. Another one, people tell, I'm shocked that people will say and just repeat things without questioning them and thinking, maybe I'll look that up. Another one is this claim that I've heard all my life and hear it again and again. And here's the claim. You tell me if you've heard this and if it bothers you as much as it bothers me. And it says, you can say whatever you want about capitalism, but no other system has brought people out of poverty, has brought so many people out of poverty. And I look at that and think, okay, clearly not true, but some nuance. I look at capitalism and think if capitalism is a focus on private property as being a fundamental right of individual citizens, especially when it comes to owning corporations or owning businesses, owning profits, being able to generate profits, and doing so without intervention from the government, there is something to say for that. Capitalism drives innovation, that you get different products and that are available. That's clearly true, I think, to some extent. You've heard this story, as far as I know is true, that when the US and the Soviet Union started to talk about life after, what the relationship would look like after the Soviet Union collapsed, I think it was Yeltsin came over to America, and one of the first things that he was on the way to see the president, and to speak with with diplomats, and they said, "Is it true that you have supermarkets where it's just full of like multiple kinds of food?" And they were like, "Yeah, like a supermarket." And he's like, "Yeah, they call it a supermarket, right? That's what." Do you think it's possible we could see it? And they took him, and of course there were photographers there, and it just happened to be great propaganda. Well, they took the Soviet delegation around a department store or a supermarket. They were flabbergasted. You get like different kinds of meat, different kinds of lettuce, different brands of this, different kinds of that, and in abundance. And you Americans just go in, you just buy whatever you want. The thing that you'll hear this again and again. Nothing lifts. No other system but capitalism has lifted people out of poverty. And the other side that you hear is that capitalism. Oh, well, I had it on the tip of my tongue here. Oh, that no socialist system in the history of the world has created a system, exists now, or where there is abundance of resources and where that generates wealth. And I was talking a little bit about this on my conversation. In my conversation I had with Diamond Dave on Sunday. Those of you who are here for that, I said that's just blatantly untrue. When people used to tell me on TikTok, I used to get in these arguments all the time. People say, "Name me one country where socialism has worked." They'll say. I say, "I got a great one for you. The United States of America." And I say, "What?" And I say, "The United States of America. You don't even, you live in a socialist utopia. You don't even realize it." Okay. One of the greatest innovations in socialism, this is my personal opinion, it's an opinion about economics, and to some extent it's political. I don't expect anybody involved with the Church of Corhor to agree with my politics, and everyone's perfectly welcome to challenge me. But I'm just saying this from a matter of historical record and talking about critical thinking. There are few programs in the history of the world as successful at implementing socialism for the benefit of other people, of all people and all society, as food stamps. And while we have been raised, I certainly have been, in a system that believes in welfare queens, according to the Reaganites. Excuse me a minute. The fact of the matter is that food stamps have been one of the greatest job creators in the history of the world. Food stamps have maintained a system of food production that makes America the primary food producer in the entire world, and the same country where we throw away more food and destroy more of our food than any other country in the world. It was farmers' unions. This is the thing, again, things they don't tell us in school. Farmers' unions built this country, saved this country from the Great Depression, won the war against the Axis powers. It was farmers who came out and said, look, if we're going to work our ass off to keep the army fed, to keep the boys in the service fed, to keep all of this fuel running back and forth, to keep all of these people, these laborers running, you're gonna pay us well, and you're gonna make sure that we're not gonna lose our farms, and you're gonna make sure that and that eventually transforms into things like subsidy checks, which you can talk about the ills of socialism all you like. In December, they had to cut more subsidy checks to keep farmers out. Keep farmers up. It's not their preference, I'm sure, but you know what? This is a system that was born out of a belief in collectivism. And I think it's really the swearing in of Zoran Mamdani that really shocked me at how these Mormon guys would go out there and try and sell us on that. All of the Muslims are trying to sell us socialism, and then turn around and say they're all trying to tap it to get money for extremist groups in Africa. Are you pick, dude? Which is it? Okay, that you can make a case for that Islam has doctrines in the Quran that could favor socialism, but you could also argue exactly the opposite. And guess what they do? And at the same time, I saw this conversation between the Paul brothers on Latter Daily Saints that I showed last week about how Hayden Paul's brother, named Blank Jackson, had said, Somalia is a shithole country. Basically, he didn't say it that way. He's Mormon. They do swear sometimes. He said Somalia is just a terrible country, and he says it just is. That's what he said. And then he goes on and says, because of this prevailing culture. And he's like, you see, he says, you just watch Black Hawk Down and you'll know everything you need to know about Islam is what he was saying. And I remember looking at that and I'm like, and I'm like, you're saying that all majority Muslim countries, which I wouldn't want to live in one, no way. They're right when they say homophobia is rampant there. I wouldn't want to live there. That misogyny is rampant in most majority Muslim countries. I wouldn't want to live there. Okay. But that's us. We come from a different culture. We come from a different lifestyle. And yes, I would tend to think that lifestyle is wrong. But that's me speaking for me. And then to go out and say, but they're all these quote unquote shithole countries, is to obviously not know about the United Arab Emirates. It's obviously to not know about Bahrain. It's obviously to not know about Kuwait. It's obviously there are people who live very good lives, and accumulate wealth all over the world. And it happens in capitalist countries. It happens in socialist countries. Scandinavian countries are some of the most, Dubai, for example. Yeah, great. Exactly, songs. And so it's like, I'm startled how many people don't realize this. If you look at, there's a world report that's published, was it every 3 years? That shows the distribution of high net worth individuals. That is to say, billionaires and people who are so rich they practically are billionaires. They might as well be billionaires per capita throughout the world. The United States doesn't even crack the top 10. I think certainly not the top 5. You always near the top of the list. You will find Finland. You will find Denmark. you'll find Scandinavian countries. Perfect. They never learn about Africa in schools. Exactly. The very fact that songs, I hope you don't mind my mentioning this. I think we had this conversation privately, but I'm going to say it here. Songs came up with a great answer I didn't even think to say when I told her about that about this clip with the Paul brothers, saying that that basically that Islam is the reason why all these African countries, where most of them, I think, largely at least northern African countries, are so impoverished, is obviously because of Islam. And songs brought out to me is like no mention at all of British and American imperialism and colonization, European colonization, and how that has and how colonization has completely decimated and set up all of these conditions that have kept African countries, frankly, subservient to foreign countries. How long before we start talking seriously about how much debt has been created in the economies of these African countries that now has basically enslaved their economies to China, which stepped in, never shying away from an opportunity to exploit poor people, stepped in to tell them, we'll build you airports, we'll build you bridges, we'll build your infrastructure, and we'll give you a great deal on it, only to discover that's not really the case. And I mean, we all would benefit from expanding our minds. I gave a whole sermon last year, probably my most controversial one. Well, I preach a lot of controversial shit. So remember, forgetting is not forgiving. And in forgetting, not forgiving, I talked about how there was a statistic that was a poll produced that showed the vast majority of high school graduates from high school here in America could not name one concentration camp from World War II. Not one. In Europe, in Germany, I think it was, their standard is whether or not you can name three. Whether or not you can name three concentration camps, I believe it was. And if you couldn't, you didn't pass. You couldn't graduate without knowing at least knowing what the concentration camps were. This is a country that that still bears the scars of this thing that was done by the ancestors of many people who live there still. Okay, it's important in a day and age where people go out and start pointing fingers and at who really got Charlie Kirk. And there's at least some people in every room that if you have a big enough conversation, here in America, you got enough people in conversation, it's important to point out once and say, it's not the Jews. Okay? Whatever you've heard, it's not. That doesn't even make sense. Think about what would be necessary to make sense. It's in exactly the same way if we take something a little less charged, but still just as ludicrous. If you have a certain number of people in a conversation in America right now, and you talk about science, you're going to have to mention that the Earth is over 10,000 years old, and that's not really a matter of opinion, and or that the Earth is round, and that's not a matter of opinion. That we can't have basic conversations about the weather without acknowledging that the Earth is round. And this is why it's important for us to teach critical thinking to our children, but also to go throughout our lives improving the process of critical thinking, which is the reason why Hellfire Agency exists, so that we can exercise greater critical thinking. Thank you. Hey, Tim passes. Who would have been? Who's surprised? It's important to understand how we came to be. Oh, really? Wow. I didn't know that. It's important to have more productive conversations and to open up to those who disagree with us and say, can we have a civil conversation? And so I would like to invite anybody I have highlighted here to come on my program. If you'd like me to come on your program, I'm willing to. Even if you just want to have a private phone conversation where you can call me out and say that I did you wrong or did you dirty, I'm here to have that conversation. But forgetting is not forgiving. For the oppressor, it's so much better because no one holds you to account if they don't remember. There's a reason why you can ask people how Hitler died and they can give you some answer. Some people can give you some answer. But you ask people how Mussolini died, not so many. There's a reason, right? That doesn't just happen out of the blue. There's a reason why the same man who tried to convince the world that, Uri Geller, that he could bend spoons with his mind, became one of the primary leaders of the flat earther movement. That doesn't just happen. Maybe it does. I'm going to put to you, it's worth looking into the correlation between these. That's why I say charlatans never change. Someday we'll do more about Joseph Smith. And now, my friends, thank you so much for being with me. This has been a great show. We've had a great turnout. I thought we had some fun. We also did a lot of jaw dropping and a lot of, what the hell? Are you serious? And I hope that I hurt at least one person's feelings out there, and that they'll contact me so I can tell them, so I can tell them whatever I feel like telling them, because frankly, we're not Christians. I'm not anyways. Happy non-Christian Korihor. I love your faces. Flash bright, my friends, and don't forget, especially in the case of Joseph Smith, charlatans never.
Top goes up, preacher works the street. Come find Jesus at the meet and greet. Sell you heaven, then shake you from their feet. They'll cure every ill, make the blind to see. Uncle Sam don't see a thing, 'cause charlatans never change. Saying in that holy name, fools burnt in holy flame. Oh, charlatans never change. Snake oil on order, freedom isn't free. Miracles on the phone and on TV. Got me again, bigger fool me. They'll raise the dead, they'll cure your gout. Pass the plate, take a pass on down, 'cause charlatans never change. Saying in that holy name, fools burned in holy flame. Oh, charlatans never change. A granite mansion, a golden throne. Sow your seed, reap what you've sown. Hung over in Jesus' tent. Refill your wallet, Sunday comes again.